The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
The ball sends it over to Edward Robles. Goal! Insert name FC! Let's go! Insert name FC!
What is up, everybody? My name is Hector Flores, host of the Insert Name FC podcast, a member of the Belly Up Sports Media Network. You can find us on all things podcasting, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast fix. Find us at Insert Name FC. Also, the video versions of this full podcast is available on Belly Up Sports YouTube channel. So go ahead and check out Belly Up Sports YouTube at Belly Up Sports. Give them a subscription. You know, like this video, by the way, and so we can help grow Belly Up Sports. You can also find this full episode on Goals TV, golz.tv. You know, that is another avenue to check us out as well. And also follow us on social media at Insert Name FC on Instagram, Facebook, the X. And as far as Americans goes, as last time I checked, TikTok is back, so you guys can also check us at TikTok at insert.name.fc. Yeah, some good. So follow us on all those things, and we'll keep keeping this growing. But yeah, this episode 202. It's a very interesting episode. Once again, it is just me this episode. Edward will be back next episode, but some things happened this episode. Well, I mean, there's obviously we're gonna talk about headlines. We got some juicy headlines involving Americans and some Americans. MLS, involving MLS and some American things that are going on. Last episode I did mention it would be interesting to see how last year's Champions League would look if you was to follow the one table format that it is now with the Champions League. So I decided to actually do it. So I actually have all the teams in one giant table, and yeah. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about that as well. So that I'm sure that will be fun. I did it. That's all I gotta say. I did it. Players of the week. Announce our players of the week. Give you guys some games to watch this weekend, and wrap this show up in a pretty little bow. So that's pretty much it, man. So yes, headlines. Me doing some Excel spreadsheets to find out about the 2023-24 Champions League season. Players of the week, games to watch, and yeah, one pretty show for you guys. So we're gonna go ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode 202. Let me tell you guys about Belly Up Sports. Belly Up Sports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. Belly Up Sports is the premier, not your average website. All right, guys, headline. So, first headline is Hellas Verona. If you guys don't know, it has been completely acquired by Presidio. Presidio is a investment firm based out of the state of Texas, which is specifically in Austin, Texas, which is actually a few hours from me here in Houston. So they have officially acquired 100% stake of Hellas Verona. Hellas Verona is now the 9th Serie A club to be backed by a North American ownership, in some sense. North America, guys, not just the United States, but North America, which If you guys don't know, Canada, USA, Mexico, that comprises of North America, in case people don't know much about geography. But yes, they are now the ninth club that has some ownership stake. And I understand that maybe American owners aren't the most exciting thing for people over there in Europe. But I feel like there's some positives. I mean, look at Fenway Sports Group right now with Liverpool and okay, there's that. I'm really trying to think. I don't know where Chelsea's at now. I know they've kind of had a bit of a dip, and I know that people aren't very fond of Todd Bowley. Olympic Lyon, I mean, they're in their situation, also owned by an American. And I mean, AC Milan, they are where they are. They're kind of in a mid-table kind of position. Last time I checked, I can't tell you right now, but I know they did lose to Juventus, so I'm sure that didn't help their position. But yes, the team has been bought. Now, the former president of Hellas Verona, Maurizio Setti, is not gone, though. He actually has been brought in to Hellas Verona in a new role, which is Senior Advisor of Football Operations. So, which is a good thing, because one, it tells you that Maurizio Setti is 100% behind Presidio. So I feel like, and two, it also helps out to have some familiarity. He's probably going to be there to help Presidio with some of the decisions they're going to have to, and gain better understanding of what the current situation is with Hellas Verona. Because let's be honest, Hellas Verona is currently fighting to avoid relegation right now. They're currently in 18th place in the Serie A, so they're trying to stay out of, get out of that relegation zone and live to see another year in the Serie A. Hellas Verona is a very interesting team. I think, as far as like their culture goes, they're one of the few, Serie A teams that have won the Serie A, which was back in the 80s, but still has found success in the Serie A nonetheless. So I think it's going to be an interesting story to follow with Hellas Verona, especially in the second half of the season. Like I said, they are in that relegation battle. Can Presidio in the next coming days, because we're still, I believe, 1 week left by the time this episode drops. 1 week left of transfer moves to be made for the January transfer window. So can they make some moves that can help stay afloat? Not compete right away, but stay afloat. And maybe we'll see how they improve Hellas Verona, if they can improve Hellas Verona. Obviously, that's going to be the goal. And like I said, the fact that Maurizio Setti is 100% behind it, being the fact that he stayed with the club, even though no longer he's the president of the club, could tell you that's a good sign, right? And so hopefully, this is a positive move for Hellas Verona to get them in a better position to stay afloat in Serie A. So I think for anybody that maybe doesn't have a team in the Serie A, maybe Hellas Verona is an interesting team, because especially if you're from Texas, maybe you hang with the Texas owned Hellas Verona. So I think that's going to be an interesting story. I'll be following through it. I think Hellas Verona is an intriguing team. I do like some of the kids that they have dropped. So I think I'm intrigued, and being that it is a Texas ownership group, I might have some bias when it comes to it, because obviously I love the state of Texas. So if you guys don't already find me annoying as it is being an American, you should probably find me doubly annoying, because I'm also from the state of Texas. Probably arguably viewed as one of the most obnoxious states in the U.S. So there is that, man. But all right, so there has been some changes in MLS, and this is our second headline. It is the MLS rule changes. One of the biggest, the most talked about rule change from the MLS this year is that they are allowing trades that are cash for player trades. That might sound weird, because this is a thing that's already been going on with the rest of the world, which is a transfer. This is cash for player trades are transfers. That is exactly what it is. It's not reinvented in any way. It is straight up just a transfer. MLS has not done this. they have not done transfers. They usually trade players for general allocation money, international slots. I don't know about draft, maybe draft picks, but to each his own how you view the draft pick. But this just goes back to one of those things that like American sports are not familiar with the idea of a transfer, like baseball. In other sports, whenever you do a quote unquote transfer for a player, it's usually because they are a free agent and can sign whatever club they want to. Whereas in the world of football, you can just straight up just pay a transfer fee to gain a player from another team. There's not any swapping of players, which has happened before. There has been stories of player swaps before in the world of football, but it's not as common because the most common thing is doing transfers. Putting in a transfer fee, getting the player, and that's it. It's not common in MLS, and I think many of the reasons why is because, the salary cap is one big thing. If you spend money, that's going to affect the salary cap in some sense because, your budget is your budget. But, and I think maybe one day if MLS ever decides to move away from the salary cap, that could probably be a benefit, especially when you do these transfers for teams that do have the money to let them spend their money. And I think it's kind of what this cash for player trade is supposed to do. Is one, it isn't a limited amount, so there's no X number of dollars that you need to not pass in order to get that player. So that's a good thing. The only thing that I do think is kind of weird is you only had a maximum of 2 cash for player trades per year. So you're only allowed to make 2 transfers per year for your club. And obviously, and I think if you're going to do a cash for player thing, it's probably trade. I don't know why I said thing. It's probably going to be for a player that you think is going to be impactful. So essentially a DP, if you will. So that's going to be kind of what an extra element. How do you choose those 2 players for that year that you're going to go out and give get a transfer fee for? But yeah, so you do have 2 players and you cannot use any other asset for that transaction. So you cannot add a player or add draft picks or international slots to get that player. It's going to be a straight transfer deal. It's nothing else can be added to it. It's interesting because this is a thing that happens across the world. It's just the MLS is finally doing it. And look, I get it. The MLS is weird. MLS just doesn't do things their own way. I 100% get it. I'm not shocked by it. I get it. MLS is weird. I'm with you with the MLS is weird thing. I've criticized MLS. I also like MLS and I support MLS and I want to see MLS grow and I want to see MLS to get better. And little by little, they're going to start making changes like this because one, you got Messi in here. Messi, I believe might be in his last year of his contract. Might be working on an extension. I could be wrong on that one. Don't quote on me, but I know that, I believe Messi only signed, what is Messi's contract? But I do believe that. That's the whole Messi's contract with MLS is right now not. I think he has a few. Let's see. Okay, so 2025 essentially is his last year with the MLS, but there is a club option. So that might be an option to go. We'll see what happens, man. Because Messi did sign a 3-year contract, so we'll see how that all entails. But so if you want to keep him around, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he wants to go to Newell's Old Boys and end it over there. Maybe you guys don't want to do that, and maybe you can entice him in some way. Well, things need to start being opened up, especially with a lot of the roster restrictions that are going on that the MLS have in place. Which, let's be honest, with Inter Miami, they've had a rough time trying to deal with registering players to fit the salary cap. And I've said it plenty of times, like it is going to be at one point where MLS is going to look at that salary cap and either push the salary cap more, further back so that way it opens up more opportunities, or they just remove the salary cap. I would honestly say one of the few things that I would say that MLS might think about copying from baseball is the competitive threshold that each team has. So each team, so if you guys aren't familiar with baseball, each MLB team has their own budget depending on what their finances are. For instance, the team like the Yankees, they have they can spend as much as they want because their competitive threshold is higher than most other teams. Now, if you pass that threshold, it's not like, oh, you have to figure out to stay under. You just have to pay a luxury tax. So, and if you're a team that, for instance, Miami's case, maybe they want to go all out one year. Maybe they're willing to pay that luxury tax if that means that the player, especially if that player is going to guarantee them a championship. So, and I think that could be something that if MLS was to copy another American league, I obviously I would prefer them to not have any sort of cap in general and kind of follow what everybody else in the world is doing. But at the same time, it's just not going to happen. Because I think for MLS, at least their thought process, because they have these rules in place when it comes to rosters, it helps with parity. I think that's the big thing. I think that they're hoping that they can still have a league where you really think anybody can win it. And I'd argue that the roster restrictions isn't the thing that keeps it from having a parity. I think to me where the parity comes into play, and I actually said this on Goals TV in Wake Up MLS, it's the playoff format. The playoff format is what causes the parity. Because I mean, if somebody really wanted to, crap, I might end up doing it. Someone could probably go through the last 5 years of MLS. Let's just do 5 years, man. Get some sort of sample size and look through the roster, look through the season completely and see who is technically the best team, which obviously is an easy thing to find out because obviously the Supporters Shield. The Supporters Shield will tell you who was the best team in MLS that year. So for instance, last year, Inter Miami was a Supporters Shield winner. They were the best team. And as the rest of the world does it, it's just a table. Whoever finishes in first place are the champions of the league. It's a very simple thing. It's not complicated. It's not hard. But, what happens is that obviously the top teams are the top teams. Now, you do have your instances where one of those teams that are usually a mid-table team, maybe not necessarily always up there in discussion, has a run of a lifetime and wins the title. We've seen it last year with Bayer Leverkusen. But, at the end of the day, the top teams are the top teams, and the bottom feeders are the bottom feeders. And I think MLS with some of the roster restrictions, you'll see teams be able to turn their season around. I mean, for instance, right now, what San Jose is doing with Bruce Arena and some of the additions some of the new players that they have brought in, many are wondering maybe are they going to have a turnaround this year? And we've seen it plenty of times in MLS. FC Cincinnati was really a bad team at one point. They turned things around, and now they're one of the most competitive teams in the MLS. So I think that, yes, the roster rules maybe keeps you in play, but in reality, the playoff format is what really causes the parity. Because at any given day, you can easily lose a game. And this was one of the arguments that I made. So if you guys want to know what I'm referring to as far as like Goals TV had a video last year that was, is the MLS better than the Premier League? Obviously, Premier League is clearly better than the MLS. We're not here to argue that. What I'm here to say when we were talking about parity, because I did give the edge to the MLS when it comes to parity, but I did emphasize that it is because of the playoff format. Because, like I said, Inter Miami was the best team that season. So if we were to follow the same format as the Premier League, Inter Miami would have won the MLS Cup because they were the best team. But because of the playoff format, any given day, anyone can come up and surprise you. I mean, for instance, Atlanta United, upset Inter Miami. That's why Inter Miami got a first round exit. And I mean, many could say that a lot of teams that I've mentioned it before on the podcast. The Supporters Shield winner doesn't always win the MLS Cup. As far as I know, the percentage is not as high as you think. The best team never doesn't always win the MLS Cup. And I think it's a very common thing when you talk about American sports. It's not always the best team that wins the championship. In the NFL, just this past week, we saw the Washington Commanders, a wildcard team, a team that couldn't even win the division, just beat the first place NFC team, the Detroit Lions in Detroit. So in American sports, it's not that it's common. Like if you're a good team, you're a good team. But when you have those one-off playoff games, things can happen. And even in a series, more often than not, in a best of series, like using baseball or basketball, for example, the better team will win the series more often than not because you have up to 7 games to win 4 games. So if you're clearly the better team, you're gonna, you might lose one, but you'll probably win you'll win the rest. So at least that's the logic behind the best of series. And while the MLS is I hope they plan on changing the playoff format, by the way. I don't like this playoff format. I've said it plenty of times. I'm not here defending the playoff format. I'm fine with the playoffs in general because MLS isn't the only league in North America that does it. Liga MX does it as well, and it's a very entertaining tournament. Like a playoff is fine with me, but I will, and Liga MX is a prime example. Club America just won Liga MX, and they were an eighth place team. They finished in 8th place and they won the championship. So it happens. I mean, they beat the first seed. They beat the team that finished in first place, Cruz Azul. So it's not for us. The playoff element, I think, does cause the parity. Does roster regulations help in some sense? A little bit, but I think that at the end of the day, the playoff format is what causes the parity in the sport. Now, it's intriguing what they're doing now that they're adding transfers. It's not new, but it is new to the MLS. And so I think it's interesting that they're only allowing you to do 2 players. And once again, I think it's just to keep fairness in some aspect. Now, one of the things to be mindful when it comes to these cash for player trades is if you do a cash for player trade, whatever especially within the MLS, whatever their status is in the MLS, it stays. So, for instance, let's say the Houston Dynamo decides to put in a cash for player trade for Ricky Puig. Let's just say they do that. So the Dynamo maybe are hoping that, hey, maybe I can get him on a cheaper deal. Yeah, I know this sounds crazy right now because I'm using Ricky Puig because Ricky Puig is solid. I mean, yes, he's injured right now, but still, he's still a quality player. But let's say that the Dynamo are hoping maybe we can give him a lower salary so it doesn't affect the salary cap, and now he's not a designated player. That's not going to happen. Like, if he's a designated player for the LA Galaxy, he will have to be a designated player for the Houston Dynamo. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what designated player is, a designated player, you can have up to 3 players on your roster that are listed as designated players. Their salary will not impact the salary cap. So these are obviously are going to be your high-end players, the guys that, like, you're giving them a lot of money because they're going to be top performers. It's not always the case, but ideally that's what you're saying when you're giving them the title designated player, that you're willing to spend beaucoup money to bring them in and hope that they're going to perform, and also helps that it doesn't impact the team's salary. So I think the salary cap. So, just so you guys know. But also what happens, though, at least for players' sake, the players are entitled to 10% of the transfer fee. So a little something for them. Obviously, the MLSPA had to approve this. The MLS Players Association had to approve this to happen. Like, MLS couldn't just make this change, without the MLSPA being behind it. So there it is. And the other thing that MLS has brought out is that now MLS can now buy out 2 players per season. So buyout is pretty straightforward, man. If there is a player that you just, and I mean, it's more common in the NBA, I think, more than anything else. But essentially, a buyout is, hey, we're just gonna buy you out of your contract. Like we don't want you on our team anymore. Here you go. Call it a day, kind of thing. So you're only allowed to do 2 players per season. So you gotta take care of it when you can. Once again, though, the buyout obviously means that you're buying this player's contract out. So that means whatever is left on that contract, you got to pay for it. So if you let's say for instance, okay, Hector, Ache for instance. Let's say Ache's contract, which I believe was like $5 million maybe. So if the Dynamo wanted to buy him out of his contract, they would have to give him $5 million so he can walk away and he can go and pursue any other club. So in some sense, this player it does benefit the player as well because 1, you get money, and 2, now you can go sign with whoever you want and you don't have to worry about it. So but the thing is though, buyouts must be done before the MLS's second transfer window. So if you guys, the second transfer window is obviously the summer transfer window. Obviously, we can't say that it isn't because they haven't changed their season yet. So as far as right now, it is still the summer transfer window. So the MLS, that's their second transfer window. So the buyouts must be done before the second transfer window. So the summer transfer window. So they have from January till July to get the buyouts done. And once again, you can only do that for 2 players per season. So these guys better not be worth it. Better be worth it to get rid of if you're spending money to buy out of their contract, which the Dynamo have utilized this because they did it to buy out Sebastian Ferreira because he just hasn't been playing, and I'm pretty sure the Dynamo are still pissed off of the whole KFC thing that happened in Mexico. But yeah, another thing that they also added was they removed general allocation expiration dates. This is it's an interesting thing. I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know that GAM had expiration dates. For people, Kelsey kind of explained it. General allocation money is money essentially that has been dispersed to all the teams. I'm just as confused. If you're confused, don't worry. I'm right there with you because I still don't know what the hell GAM or what the hell TAM is. TAM is target allocation money, by the way. I still don't know. And now I'm finding out that they used to have expiration dates. So you were given this general allocation money for player acquisitions, and now you're telling me there's an expiration. So you're giving me this money, but if I don't use it by a certain day, it's gone. And so that sounds stupid. So I'm glad. Well, which obviously, if I'm thinking that, maybe that's the reason why they removed it. So there's that. Do I know anything about GAM and TAM? I don't. I have said it plenty of times. Like MLS, some of their regulations makes absolute no sense. And I've listened to press conferences from MLS GMs, and still I don't understand it at all. I wish they could just have it simple and just do transfers just like the rest of the world does. But America's gonna America, and there's really, what else can you do? And so another thing that also was added onto the MLS was off-roster homegrown changes. So if you are a homegrown player, which obviously, I want to say academy product. I feel like academy product is what you mean by homegrown player, but I don't know. I guess kids that also went to college but also played from your academy, or maybe you're from I can't tell you. Maybe this is another thing that I have no idea what's a homegrown player. If I were to see how I rate it, I'm assuming it's an academy player. But so they're allowed to play in 6 regular season games and in unlimited cup games. Okay. All right. Well, that's good for them. For a player to be considered an off-roster homegrown player, they must be under 21 and once moved to senior or supplemental spot. Don't know what that means, but hey, okay. If I don't even know what off-roster homegrown means. That honestly don't. Like, are you taking me off the roster or am I on the roster? Like, all right, whatever, just whatever. But there are some changes. Also, they made a change to designated player loans, which is if you have a designated player, he's not panning out, so you decide to ship out on loan. So essentially, even if the team that you're loaning them to is paying majority of their salary to maybe where it doesn't hurt the salary cap in any way, that you feel like, hey, now we can go get another DP. We opened up a DP slot. No. So what MLS is doing now is, even if you send a designated player on loan, that designated player spot is still being used by that player. So for instance, the previous year, Sebastian Ferreira for the Houston Dynamo, they loaned him out to a Brazilian team. Not this year, the year before. They loaned him out to a Brazilian team. Obviously, like I said, this was where the whole KFC debacle happened. And also, he wasn't having a good attitude. So they sent him to Brazil on loan. And so, but the Dynamo didn't have a designated player spot. They just had a designated player that was loaned out. And so I think for me, if anything, that just means pushes MLS teams to make sure that they are not screwing up with these transfers when they go after a designated player. So it's like you better have this guy better be good if you're going to be willing to have this player be exempt from your salary cap, which makes a ton of sense. But yeah. And the final one is roster construction model. So MLS clubs must be roster compliant by February 21st. So, like I said, what I mentioned with Inter Miami, they had a lot of issues with making their roster be compliant to MLS standards. So now the deadline is February 21st, unless you're a new expansion team to the MLS. So, for instance, San Diego FC is it FC San Diego? Whatever. San Diego is a new MLS team. They're a new MLS expansion team. So they don't have to be compliant by February 21st. They have to be compliant by the summer transfer window. That's when they have to be, their team has to be, compliant to the MLS roster rules. So interesting. I think MLS is going to start making more and more changes as the years progress. For one, trying to make the MLS a better product, a more enticing product to players overseas. Make it more of a destination that makes sense to players from Europe. I've said it plenty of times, man. At this point, MLS, while you do want to go get those top end players from over there, regardless of their age, you do still need to have a mix of MLS experience, like guys that understand how this league works. Which I think was one of the downfalls for Inter Miami, is the lack of MLS experience that they had on their team, which is crazy to think because they had a lot of championship experience because of, obviously, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, and Lionel Messi. That's a lot of good, and Luis Suarez. That's a lot of experience that knows how to win, titles, just not the MLS apparently. But I think more as they're trying to be more, what's the word? Trying to be more and more having more aspirations to make this league even more of a destination. They're going to do things that will help open things up, which, by the way, cash for player trade, it opens up a possibility to this. Hey guys, this is Hector from the Insert Name FC podcast, here to tell you guys about Canada Dips. It is a great tasting, superior alternative to traditional dip, using CBD in a way that is radical, enjoyable, and effective. It comes in 5 core flavors: wintergreen, mint, citrus, mango, and American spice. Canada Dip CBD is the new evolution in dip, allowing guys to enjoy great, long-lasting taste without the downsides. If you guys want to go ahead and try them out, use the code BELLYUP20 at CanadaDipCBD.com. Once again, BELLYUP20 at CanadaDipCBD.com, and you'll get yourself 20% off your purchase. Thank you again for Canada Dips for being a great partner of Belly of Sports. One of the biggest rumors that just hit is the possibility of Neymar going to the MLS. So I believe Neymar has not been registered for Al Hilal for the second half of the season. I don't know if his contract has been released. I don't think he's been released from his contract. It's a lot of money, by the way. But obviously his time in Al Hilal has not been ideal. Especially with the injury. That's not very necessarily Al Hilal's fault. It's more so just it happened for Neymar. He got injured, and that's why he hasn't been playing. But I do. But for more and more now, it seems that discussions of him making a possible move to the MLS has been something that's been talked about. Neymar has been rumored to wanting to rejoin, Messi and Suarez to reunite MSN. I think there's certain things that will prevent that. The one thing being MLS roster rules. The whole thing. That's like the big thing though. But even despite that, Inter Miami was initially viewed as a heavy favorite, respectively so, because he does want to be reunited with Lionel Messi. I think that would be, he's had some interviews where he talked about how he enjoyed his time at PSG with Messi because obviously they're good friends. I'm sure Neymar was one of the reasons why Messi decided to go to PSG when he did go there for those 2 seasons. Was it 2? Yeah, it was 2 seasons. Might have been one of the reasons why he went there, but obviously his time at PSG is his time at PSG. They still want things. I feel like sometimes we talk about how like as if PSG wasn't successful with Messi, but obviously when you think of PSG wanting success, they're talking about Champions League, which that didn't happen with Messi. But yeah, Inter Miami was initially the heavy favorite, but Mascherano, who is now the manager for Inter Miami, he in their media day he immediately shut that down. He's like it's just not gonna it can't happen because of the MLS roster restrictions, and they're right. He's absolutely right about that. So there is no way. Unless MLS wants to make some changes, but yeah, that seems to be the true case. But there has been one team that has popped up more, and that is the Chicago Fire. The Chicago Fire has been dropped to sign Neymar, has been heavily pushed amongst all medias that this is the team that is speaking with Neymar right now. Apparently there has been discussions with Neymar as far as his representation. And also on top of that, Chicago Fire does have Neymar's discovery rights, which if you're hearing this, you probably are asking me, what in the world are you talking about? And I agree, this is one of the dumbest things that MLS has, which is discovery rights. Essentially, discovery rights means that the team has basically called dibs. That's all the discovery rights means. It means that the Chicago Fire has called dibs at Neymar and while everybody else was sleeping. And so if you want to try to get Neymar, you have to make a deal with the Chicago Fire for those discovery rights. So, you're going to have to buy the discovery rights from Chicago in order to pursue Neymar. So because of that, Chicago essentially monopolized themselves to be the front runners for Neymar. Now, maybe Inter Miami wants to buy out that discovery right, and that could be very much an option. But as of right now, Chicago has made some offers, and as a matter of fact, they're actually prepared to offer Neymar a deal similar to Messi. So Messi, if you guys know, he has a certain percentage of MLS sales. He has a certain percentage. He gets a cut of the Apple TV deal. So this would be one of those things where not only does Chicago Fire pay Neymar, but MLS will come into play to help out and get Neymar to the Chicago Fire and to the MLS. But it's rumored that Neymar actually wants more than what Messi has. And if you think that this is his only option, it is not, because Santos, the club that started it all for Neymar, would love to have him back. And how perfect of a story would that be for Neymar if he can, move on from the whole Al Hilal thing, the whole injury thing, go back to Santos and get his groove back. And I don't know where Santos is. I don't know if Santos is back in the Serie B of Brazil, but I think they should be. But anyways, how perfect would that be for him to be able to get Santos back into the conversation for Brazil and maybe back into the conversation for Copa Libertadores? I think that could also be a crazy thing. I think we, as far as Neymar goes, I know he's been to America plenty of times. I mean, he's a big fan of he loves the NBA. He's mentioned how, in his documentary, how he was a big fan of Kobe Bryant. Which I'm sure he's had interactions with Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant is also a Barcelona fan. And I think that, America is enticing to him. Do I think Chicago is the destination for him? Probably not because of the cold weather. I think maybe he would want something with some preferable weather, like Florida, like Miami, Florida, maybe even California. Maybe he wants to go to LA. Maybe he wants to have the Hollywood lifestyle. Those are some things that, could entice Neymar. Chicago is a cool city. I think obviously Chicago Bulls is going to be the one thing you think of because of Michael Jordan. But I think Chicago would be fun. I think Chicago, obviously, but it's not necessarily the most ideal situation. You are coming in with a new head coach in Greg Berhalter. Depends how you feel about Greg Berhalter as far as like what he will do with Chicago. Chicago is, wasn't great last year. So I think it's going to be essentially a project depending on what Chicago does. I know Chicago has been in the mix for some players, have been very active in the transfer window, trying to gain guys. I don't know if they've signed anybody yet. They do have some interesting players like Brian Gutierrez, who was actually had a really good performance in the friendly against Venezuela. I think that this maybe could be it would be an interesting story nonetheless. If Neymar and MLS in general will be interesting, but I think Chicago, I just don't know how good of a fit Chicago is. I think there's a lot of questions behind Chicago. Is Chicago going to be able to compete right away? Does Neymar even want to be on a team that has a lot of questions behind it? Does he even want to play Berhalter ball? Is a good fair question as well. I don't know. I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is the return of MSN, which once again is here in Miami to rejoin forces with Messi, Suarez, Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets, guys that he's familiar with from his days at Barcelona. Or I mean, LA probably makes a lot of sense to me too. San Diego, that I think would be really cool. New MLS team. You just go and get you go and get Neymar. And kind of how a few episodes ago, me and Jose were talking about Cristiano Ronaldo to San Diego. I mean, Neymar to San Diego. What if we get a San Diego Miami final? I mean, that would be a very interesting to see who can get the first MLS Cup. Will it be Neymar and San Diego FC, or will Inter Miami finally get the MLS Cup? Those are some of the things that could be interesting to see. I think Neymar's impact in the MLS, if this were to happen, and I think obviously right now I can't talk about hypotheticals. I am going to talk about hypotheticals. I'm going to talk about within the realistic situation as far as MLS goes, which is the fact that at the end of the day, Neymar can only go to Chicago unless someone buys Chicago's discovery rights. So right now in Chicago, I think Chicago is a really good sports town. I mean, depressing sports town, but still a really strong fan base. I think it has a lot of fans, a lot of football fans in Chicago as well. It's a very diversity, a lot of Polish influence, a lot of, obviously Brazilian is not the one thing I know. I know it has a lot of Mexico fans over there in Chicago as well. I think it could be I think how he wins over Chicago will be really cool. But I think Neymar for him, and it's kind of, the thing is for him to move on from what has happened since him moving to Al Hilal, which once again is the injury. The injury was the only thing that really hurt him from his time in Al Hilal. I don't know if anything else you would say hurt. I don't think the relationship with Al Hilal and Neymar are bad. As a matter of fact, I think Al Hilal is even trying to extend him because obviously they would love to have him in Saudi Arabia, especially when the 2030 World Cup, because I believe that's 2030 World Cup, I believe is the one that Saudi Arabia is hosting. Or it's 2034. One of those. Actually, 2034, I believe, is the one that Saudi Arabia is hosting. So I think they're trying to see if they can hold them long enough till the 2034 World Cup. But I think when Neymar's healthy, he's just an amazing player. I think he's a solid player. The flopping thing, I mean, people are going to say that, but I think nonetheless, he's a solid player. I think he could really be a game changer. I think if he can find his groove back and have fun with the game, I think that he's going to be great for the MLS. I think he's a personality, which I think is also a benefit for the MLS. I think him having fun and doing all the interactions, I think he's going to be great for social media. I think Neymar is honestly probably perfect if MLS wants to have someone to help grow the game in America. No offense to Messi, but Messi is just not the social butterfly that is Neymar. And so I think, and this is not dissing Messi. I think Messi's name alone brings a lot of attention to him, but Neymar has a name as well. And Neymar also has an energy. And so I think that is going to be huge for the MLS. If they can get Neymar to the MLS, I think it'll be impactful for MLS. Is it going to be more discussions of the retirement league? Yes. But at this point, it's freaking Neymar. Like, who wouldn't want to get Neymar? So I do think it would be a great acquisition for MLS if they can get Neymar on one of these MLS club rosters. Do I think should it be Chicago? No. I think he needs to be in a huge market. Chicago is a big market, but not for MLS. They have fans. I'm not dissing Chicago Fire fans. I know that they're a hungry fan base and they want to see the team compete. I just don't know if Neymar you're going to need, you need to have more than just Neymar to be good. And I mean, they do have some players that I think are interesting, but they still need more. Like, I would love to see him in LAFC. I would love to see him in LA Galaxy, even though I don't think they really need him. But LAFC might be an interesting destination. Inter Miami obviously makes the most sense in the world, especially if you're a huge Barcelona fan and you would love just the Inter Miami tour. But I would love to see him go somewhere else because I just don't want Inter Miami to be even more bigger than what it is. Because at this point, Inter Miami is probably bigger than the MLS. But if it does happen, which, like I said, I think Santos is probably the clear front runner. As much as like the idea of him coming to MLS would be cool, I think his return to Santos will be even clearly massive for the game, and I think that would be just as extraordinary of him going back to Brazil than going to the MLS. But I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see more as this story transpires and where he ends up. Maybe he stays at Al Hilal at the end of all this, but I think it's still an interesting story to follow. We'll see what happens in the days to come. But we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to do what I didn't want to do, which is look back at the 2023-24 last year's Champions League, but in the format that the Champions League has now.
Fight and win!
All right, guys. So I know I said I wasn't going to do it because I said that is a lot of time to be consumed, but I did it. So if you guys remember last episode, me and Edward were talking about the Champions League format, and I was very much intrigued as how last year's Champions League would look if it was to have followed the giant table. And so I did it. I created a spreadsheet and I did it. I will say though, obviously there's some asterisks behind it because one, there's clearly less teams from last year because obviously or if you didn't know, they expanded the Champions League. They expanded it to more teams. But the other thing is obviously in this Champions League format, each team plays 8 matches versus last year they played 6 matches and it was against the teams that were in their same group. So it's a little bit different, I know, but I just wanted to see how the chips would all fall if they were to follow it. So I did it. I did the math. I did it. Okay. Am I proud of it? Kind of, yeah. I'm kind of proud of it. But here's the table. So the teams that would have automatically qualified to the round of 16 would be in first place Manchester City. So Manchester City and Real Madrid both went undefeated in the group stage, but the advantage does go to Manchester City off a goal differential. So they scored more goals than Real Madrid. They allowed the same number of goals, but obviously the goal differential was significantly higher. So both teams finished 6-0, both with 18 points apiece. But because of goal differential, Manchester City does become the first place team. Second place is Real Madrid. Third place is Bayern Munich. Fourth place, Atletico Madrid. Fifth place, Arsenal. Sixth place, FC Porto. Seventh place, Barcelona. And eighth place, Real Sociedad. That is a very La Liga heavy top 8. So that is very interesting. Once again, and obviously, I was wrong on this, but I went first by points, then by goal differential, and I think the third tier, the third tiebreaker was goals scored. I could be wrong that maybe that's not how Champions League does it, but that's what I did for this one. I don't think it changes anything too much. I think it is interesting that a 3-win Real Sociedad jumps over a 4-win RB Leipzig, but once again, the goal differential is really what stood them apart from RB Leipzig. But now, before I get to the teams that are in the playoff round, not the 1-game playoff, but they go into the playoff round. The teams that don't make it, we have Red Bull Salzburg. We have at 25th, 26th place. We have Young Boys. We have Braga, Celtic, Antwerp, Union Berlin, Sevilla, and Crvena Zvezda. I don't know how to pronounce that team. I probably should eventually learn how to pronounce that team. But those are the teams that are immediately knocked out from the Champions League, these teams were, in fact, eliminated from the Champions League, I believe. But yes. So the teams that essentially would be playing in that knockout, in the knockout round, in the playoff round, I guess. I don't really know how they call it, but you would have RB Leipzig taking on Benfica, Inter Milan versus Manchester United. That's actually a pretty juicy game. Or, well, I mean, if we're talking about last year's Manchester United, maybe not so much. Borussia Dortmund versus Galatasaray, Napoli versus Newcastle United, Lazio versus Feyenoord, Shakhtar Donetsk versus RC Lens, PSV versus AC Milan, and PSG versus Copenhagen. Yeah, I mean, these would be some interesting matches. The one that at least stands out the most to me probably would be probably Newcastle United and Napoli. That probably would be the one. But yeah, I was just intrigued. I was intrigued if this was applied last year, who would be where, and I think honestly, I don't know if many people would like I said, man, with this new Champions League format, I wasn't against it by all means. I kept a very open mind because of the fact that you just don't know. You just don't know how it's going to open up. You don't know who misses out, and I mean, so if we were to look at, last year's, the teams that did miss out on Champions League, in the standings. So Manchester United, they actually missed out. They were in fourth place, so they were out. They're in a position where they could possibly get into the round of 16, just right there off the jump. Let's see, anything else crazy? I mean, the group of death, they're all still advancing. Like all the teams from the group of death, right? Yeah, because Newcastle United was the fourth place team, and they're in 21st. They're in the knockout, in the playoff round. So is AC Milan, so is PSG, and Dortmund. I mean, funny enough, they're all in the playoff round. None of them advanced to the round of 16 because they basically beat up each other in their group. Like I said, though, I do take this with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that this is verbatim how it would be, but because clearly, if you're playing against this, you're going to play against three same teams because you're in the group. It's a little different now because this year you had to play against 8 different teams, depending on 2 teams from Pot A, 2 teams from Pot B, 2 teams from Pot C, and 2 teams from Pot D. So things were going to it's significantly different, but I still think that it's like seeing how this all falls in line. Do we get the same round of 16? Probably not. And I think that I just was intrigued. This was probably just a waste of time, but I just thought it was interesting to at least check out to see how all things would have transpired. And I'm fine with it. I think it's an interesting table, and yeah, now we know. Maybe you learned something, maybe we didn't, but there it is, all for the eyes to see. So yeah, maybe I wasted my time, maybe I didn't. I can't really tell you the truth. I just know I literally just sat through an Excel spreadsheet to do this, and I'm going to feel like I did something. So that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to look on the table. But all right, players of the week are brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an awesome ticketing site to find anything that is live events, concerts, sporting events, comedy shows. If it's live, it's going to be there on SeatGeek. SeatGeek has a very easy app, site, whatever you use it. It's very simple to follow. It's very simple to use. It has a grading scale using colors. If the seat is labeled, it has a red mark on it, then that means that it is not a good deal for those tickets, for those seats. You keep scrolling through the app, you're going to find a better seat. If it's green, that means that price for that seat is perfect. Buy these tickets and you're going to enjoy your event. And I love the simplicity of SeatGeek. I use SeatGeek plenty of times in my life, and I've enjoyed it for going to MLS games and even to concerts. So I love simplicity of SeatGeek, and you should also enjoy the simplicity of SeatGeek. But if you're not 100% sold just yet, if you are your first-time user and you use the code BELLYUPSPORTS, you'll save $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. So once again, use the code BELLYUPSPORTS, and you'll save $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets. All right, my player of the week is Leon Goretzka, who scored 2 goals in Bayern Munich's 3-2 win against Werder Bremen. Solid performance from Goretzka. I don't know how often we're going to be mentioning this guy, but, that is my name. Edwards' player of the week is Justin Kluivert, who scores a hat-trick in Bournemouth's 4-1 victory against Newcastle United. Fun fact, Justin Kluivert is also the son of Patrick Kluivert. Barca, I don't know if it's, well, he definitely was a part of Barca's history, so I'm going to say that he, in fact, is a legend. So Patrick Kluivert, I believe it's Patrick Kluivert. Yep, Patrick Kluivert. So Barca, I would say Barca legend. He's definitely a part of some of Barcelona's rich history. So, and also Dutch. But all right, man, game. So congratulations to Leon Goretzka and Justin Kluivert for being our players of the week. Make sure you guys use that code BellyUpSports, save $20 off for your first purchase at SeatGeek. So thank you once again, SeatGeek. All right, games to watch this weekend. We got Chivas versus Tigres in Liga MX. Pretty juicy matchup, 2 strong fan bases. In Liga, we got RC Lens versus Angers and Nice versus Marseille. In the Bundesliga, we got Borussia Dortmund versus Werder Bremen. Borussia Dortmund needs to get in the positive side of results now more than ever. They are definitely dipping tremendously, and they need to get back on track. Can they do it with Werder Bremen? And RB Leipzig taking on Bayer Leverkusen. That's in the Bundesliga. Serie A, we got Napoli versus Juventus and Lazio versus Fiorentina. In La Liga, we got Atletico Madrid versus Villarreal and Rayo Vallecano versus Girona. And in the Premier League, we got Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest. So I think that's going to be a really juicy matchup. Two teams that look pretty decent in the Premier League this year. And we got Man City versus Chelsea. So battle of the money teams. So we'll see. We'll see how. Well, to some extent. But all right. Those aren't all the games. Obviously, there's a lot of games going on this weekend. But if you guys need a good beginner's guide to some good football matches, well, there you go. Make sure you guys go ahead and enjoy it. At the end of the day, as long as you try it and enjoy it and love the beautiful game, that's all that really matters to me. So we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll wrap this show up.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
All right, guys. You know what? My closing thought for this episode is the NFL. Obviously, if you guys know, I'm American. I don't shy away from it. I'm also a first generation immigrant. Being that my parents were from El Salvador, they moved here. I was born here in the U.S., which that's why I say it. It's a first generation immigrant. But the reason why I want to talk about the NFL is because the NFL was very much foreign to me at one point in my life because of the fact that I grew up in a very Salvadorian home. Kind of one of the things about being a first generation immigrant is that I don't know if I want to use immigrant either, but the things about being a first generation is that you're still very much in your family's culture. So I did a lot of Salvadorian things, obviously, and I know I've mentioned it plenty of times. I've actually mentioned it a few times that as far as like football goes, my dad always supported Brazil, and to the point where I was dumb, and this is just me being dumb because so another thing I point out about this podcast is I'm not necessarily the brightest person in the world, because my dad's rooted for Brazil so much, my dumb brain thought, oh, we're Brazilian. And then a few years later, I find out that I'm Salvadorian. As a matter of fact, I've been to El Salvador a few times now in my life, even as a kid. I've gone there. So I'm very familiar with being a Salvadorian. I'm very proud of being Salvadorian. I'm very proud of my roots. And if you guys tell me that I'm not Salvadorian because I was born here, by law, I'm actually Salvadorian because in El Salvador, if your parents are from El Salvador, you are Salvador by them. So you are legally a Salvadorian through your parents. So yeah. But so like I said, I was very more in, and then like the community I grew up in, it was very Latin, but it was very, Latino, so me and my friends would go out to the park and we'd play football, futbolito. And so, I was never, so like American football has never was ever within my eyesight, because if we were at home and if we weren't watching cartoons or going outside and playing, or futbolito, or watching football with my dad, I really didn't know about any other sport. I was a kid, It wasn't until one day my dad was invited to with some of his work friends to go watch which Super Bowl was it? What year was it? Yeah. So it wasn't until the year 2000. The year 2000 when I watched my first American football game. Um, and it was the 2000 Super Bowl. It was the St. Louis Rams taking on the Tennessee Titans, which I didn't know that the Tennessee Titans were originally from Houston. They were the Houston Oilers. I didn't. Well, once again, I didn't follow American football, so I didn't know anything about football. Um, I remember like not really caring at much at first, and it wasn't until I saw the kind of watching Kurt Warner because that St. Louis Rams team was considered the best show on turf. At least that's what they told me. But obviously now I know a little bit more about it. But so watching Kurt Warner and Isaac Bruce and I don't know, I don't believe Marshall Faulk was on the team yet, but anyways, they played their game, it goes down the wire, came down to that final play where they threw the ball to the Tennessee player, he tries to reach out for the end zone and he just fell short. And the St. Louis Rams win the Super Bowl that year. Um that's when I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So I kind of wanted to learn more. This is probably like my first taste of real American culture, at least as a kid. I mean, besides, American foods and things like that. Like, for you guys to understand, at least the American sports that I came from, it was actually, it all came from one person. And it was this gentleman named, by the name of Pablo Rosado, who essentially became like a father figure to me. And he started teaching me about American sports. Now, he is a Mexican. He grew up Mexican. He supported El Tri. He loves football just as much as he loves American football. And he also loved baseball. He loved basketball. And he taught me about the other sports. And he also taught me that it was 100% okay to like these sports and also still like things that make your culture, right? So he always told me it's okay to be Latino, but it's also cool to embrace the American culture. And um, so this was like my first taste of America. And I remember I was like, oh, is there a Houston team? And they're like, no. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then obviously, 2002, the Houston Texans became a thing. So it didn't take that long for me to find my team, which was the Houston Texans. Um, but like the reason why I talk about this is because it's fine to like other sports. Like if you are one of those people that just strictly love this one sport, that's fine too. But me growing up, like if it wasn't for Pablo teaching me all these sports, I wouldn't have realized how much I love baseball. I wouldn't have realized how much I love American football. But at the end of the day, football is still my sport. That's the sport I loved. I played it and I enjoyed it. I fell in love with the game, all going back to funny enough, the '98 World Cup where I won $5 off my dad because, France beat Brazil. But then I also got the awesome story of my dad waking me up at early in the morning in 2002 to watch Brazil beat Germany in the 2002 FIFA World Cup in Japan and South Korea. Like those are some cool moments, being able to going through Marine Corps boot camp and getting letters from my cousin about the 2010 World Cup because even though I watched some of the matches, I didn't get to watch the final because I was in boot camp. And it was, to me, that was really cool, was how my family knew how much I loved football, that they were sending me letters and giving me updates, as well as other updates as well, like LeBron James going to the Miami Heat. But to me, that's what I thought was really cool about it. And I think, once again, as much as I love football, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, as much as I love it and I still have that passion for it, it's 100% okay to like other sports. And sometimes I always tell people, man, go and experience it. Like, if you want to see what the hubbub is all about, why Americans love American football, go to a game. Like, don't watch it on TV. Go to the game and experience it yourself. See what they see. And the same thing goes to an American that thinks soccer is a communistic sport for some weird reason. Go to a soccer game. Go see go feel the energy of the crowd. Go see the experience, why we're on the edge of our seats for just hoping that shot is perfectly hits that corner, the corner of that goal. Those are the things that you live for. And so the reason why I talk about the NFL is because I want to tell people, one, it's okay to like all sports. It's okay to like as many sports you like. I recently got into Formula One. I think it's really cool. I love the strategy. I like it more than NASCAR because I'm not having to watch 500 laps. I just have to watch, 50 to 79 maybe laps. So I find it more enjoyable. But, I didn't know anything about Formula One. I still don't, but I'm intrigued by it and I enjoy watching it. So I think I love the strategy that comes in, and not just the racing element, but the pit crew and all that. And so I think that stop trying to say one sport's better than the other, because at the end of the day, what these athletes are doing is impeccable. Regardless, to be saying that they're the best at their sport, they have put hard work and effort. Regardless of if you think the sport is minuscule compared to the other sport, it is still an impressive feat. Because at the end of the day, we're watching them. They're doing it. And so, also the other thing about the NFL that I want to say is I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. Though the Texans, the refs, yes, did have some questionable calls, but at the end of the day, the Texans just didn't get it done. They as far as the offensive side, special teams didn't pan out too well either. So it's not necessarily all on the refs, but the refs still piss me off nonetheless. But I would say this past weekend of NFL action has been a lot of fun. Chiefs and Texans was very dramatic. The Washington Commanders to upset the Detroit Lions like that, I think was cool. We got 2 snow games, which was awesome. We had the Eagles, and I believe now the Buffalo Bills just beat the Ravens. So I think that we're going next week, this coming weekend for Championship Sunday is going to be a juicy one, because now we're going to have the Eagles and Commanders and Bills and Chiefs to see who is going to go to the Super Bowl. So that's going to be exciting. And obviously, shout out to Belly Up Sports, by the way, because obviously they had their college football championship game special. I was supposed to be on it. Due to some conflicting things that was happening around the time of the recording, I wasn't available for it. But still, shout out to Kelsey, Vince, Jared, and Kev for doing a solid job for the show. I think it was done pretty well. And expect more super shows like this on Belly Up Sports. A lot of things are happening there. Check out the website, bellyupsports.com. Follow them subscribe to them on YouTube at Belly Up Sports. And check out what they're doing, man, because they're doing some pretty cool stuff. Lots of great articles that are being written, lots of blogs. So be on the lookout for some of the great blogs that are going to be out there on Belly Up Sports. And also, check them out on Instagram and X at Belly Up Sports. So you can go be on the know. Also, Goals TV, man, check them out. Check out their website, goz.tv. If you guys want to see the true passion of of the game of football in America, and that is association football, aka soccer. If you guys want to know a little bit more about the game, at least the fans' perspective in that game, especially more of MLS, even how Americans view other leagues. One, give them a fair shot. Like, hear them out. Yeah, we're going to say dumb stuff. That's fine. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Only one person really only one being out there can really dictate who is perfect, and it's none of us. But yeah, check out Goals TV. Follow them on Instagram at goz.tv. Once again, goz.tv, goals.tv. And on the X at goz_TV, goz_TV, goals_TV on the X. Lots of great stuff, man. Jose and what he's been able to grow with that network is awesome. And go ahead and check it out, because they're trying to make football, soccer cool in America. So, and that's going to help it grow. Also, if you guys like our beats for our intros or outros, it's done by no one other than D. Roosevelt Spencer, our beat maker extraordinaire. We love Spencer so much that he is the namesake of our Player of the Year award, the Roosevelt Spencer Player of the Year. So, which, by the way, shout out to Robert Lewandowski for winning it for the 3rd time. So, follow him on Instagram at ThatGuyDope. If you guys need some beat work done, hit him up there. He'll take great care of you like he always does with us. With all that being said, man, that is episode 202. Thank you so much for listening. Catch us next week when Edward comes back for episode 203, which I'm sure we'll have some fun discussions on there as well, especially as Edward's trying to get back into the groove of podcasting. So take care, guys.